The Easter holidays brought total misery. The floods brought chaos, devastation and even death. I'm in Leamington Spa in Warwickshire, where 2 days ago the River Lem here would have been way above my head, and you can see all the debris that's been left behind in the trees, and it's still raining. Well, later on in the programme we'll be asking, could this have been predicted and prevented? But first, Gary Hudson reports on the great Easter floods.
Damaged bridges and torn up roads are what remain of the torrent that swept across this part of South Warwickshire. Extra rubbish collections are being laid on in Northampton to take away flood-damaged furniture. At the shoe factory, like so many other industrial premises, it's not just about drying things out.
One of the ongoing issues is going to be the problem with every single machine having been underwater to a depth of 3 to 4 feet. And each machine will have to be properly serviced and adjusted.
Everyone has a flood story to tell, it seems, like television presenter Will Hanrahan, who, after a 9-hour drive from Birmingham to just south of Stratford, tried to walk the last few hundred yards home and almost didn't make it.
The river up to my chest by now picked me up, and I literally fell against this post, which actually had barbed wire on it. And the barbed wire embedded itself into my clothes, and it was that which just gave me a few seconds to recover my thoughts and to somehow clamber onto what I now know as this, but you couldn't see this because it was underwater, and get back onto the road.
Residents of one housing estate in Worcester have said they'll try to sue the Environment Agency for leaving sluice gates on the River Severn open during the floods. The agency said today they were not open at the critical time.
If the sluice gates weren't sufficient, then that is another problem and another area that needs to be investigated. And that is something else that we should be asking serious questions, and we should want answers about as the Residents' Association here.
The extent of flooding at the weekend appears to have taken everyone by surprise, with unprecedented water levels at only a few hours' notice.
When it became apparent on Thursday morning that there was going to be a severe weather event to affect the South Midlands, we issued severe weather warnings accordingly to the local radio and television. But it's a very rare event, and that's why we couldn't give days in advance warning. We always thought there'd be some wet weather about on that day, but obviously it was particularly severe for those southern Midland counties.
It's hard to imagine that only a few days ago the gently flowing River Stour, 5 feet beneath my feet, was up here and strong enough to crack brick and concrete like a matchstick.
The terrible power of nature was on show across the Midlands for those who had the chance to observe it. This caravan met its fate in Evesham. This home video, taken in Worcester, may well have a practical application when it comes to making insurance claims. In Warwickshire, where much of the worst damage was done, the County Council too is counting the cost.
There's been a very big cost to the public purse in terms of damage to roads and bridges, the cost of staff time. We're looking at that now. We're trying to make an estimate. When we know what that is at the end of the week, we'll decide whether we need to go for any extra help from outside. That help would come from central government, as was hinted at by John Prescott, the Deputy Prime Minister, when he came to review the area on Sunday.
Unforeseen, unprepared for, and undoubtedly very costly indeed. But the damage is only now being quantified as the water disappears just a little more slowly than it arrived. Gary Hudson, Midlands Today.
Well, all around the Midlands, people are still reeling and they're asking why. Well, joining me on the banks of the River Lem is Pete Coxall from the Environment Agency. Mr. Coxall, surely these freak weather conditions could have been predicted?
Well, there was some prediction. We did get red warnings out to those people who we knew were at risk, but it was an unprecedented amount of rainfall. We had the amount of rain that we'd normally expect for the whole of April in a 24-hour period.
But could anything have been done to protect people's homes and people's livelihoods?
Well, on the scale of the event we had, then it was very difficult to know who would be affected. Normally we know who's affected up to a 1-in-100-year flood event, but this was greater than that. It was an unprecedented situation.
Are you confident that all the flood controls like sluice gates were properly managed?
Yes, we had men working round the clock, 24-hour manning. We had people coming in from other areas, bringing pumps in, bringing extra men in. We did hear of a situation in Worcester where there was some sort of complaint that people thought we hadn't closed the sluice gates. I can assure those people that we did close the gates at 4:45 on Thursday afternoon.
Now, some people I've spoken to today in Leamington, they're not convinced, not confident that this is a once in 150 years occurrence. Can you offer them any reassurance?
Well, in Leamington itself, we don't have records dating back far enough to actually update the return period. Certainly in Evesham further down, it was a 1 in 150 year event. That means there's a 1 in 150 chance of it happening in any one year, so it is possible it could happen next year again.
Well, let's hope not. Pete Coxhill, thank you very much indeed. Well, later in the programme, the horrible, smelly mess left behind by the floodwaters and how quickly will the insurers pay out. But for now, back to Lawrence.
Jane, thank you. Other news now.
Yes, thank you, Lawrence. I'm on the banks of the River Lem and I'm in Victoria Park, which is usually a beauty spot, but as you can see, when they go down, they leave the muck behind, and now thousands of people are having to clear it out of their homes. One of these is Candy Borsada, who lives here in Leamington, and earlier today she showed me what's left of her home.
This is all the stuff that was ruined in the house on the ground floor. It's all our Christmas decorations, and in the garage is all our baby's pram and car seat and the little carry pack there. And then in the house, the water in the hall came up, as high as the radiator, so the curtains were ruined. It'll all have to be redecorated in here. In the cupboard under the stairs, we had quite a lot of things of sentimental value. We had old school books and university things, lots of, other bits and pieces.
That must be really upsetting.
It's very upsetting because you can't, might not be worth money, but you can't replace things like that. And then in the utility room, the fridge freezer was floating on its side, and the washing machine's been ruined as well, and the boiler, so we've got no heating or hot water.
Did the water come in really quickly?
It did. Well, we woke up at 5 in the morning with the car alarms coming off, and already it was probably about 2 foot high, and then we were watching it come up the stairs, and we were terrified that it was going to get up to the second floor, but it did eventually stabilise, and then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon it came down fairly quickly.
Leaving the mess.
That's right, yes. It was. The water was quite smelly. I guess it was sewagey type water, so the smell in the house is really horrible. We are insured, yes, luckily, and our insurance company have been very helpful. So we've got to. Oh yes, the water came up well above the electrical sockets, so we didn't have any electricity.
And what about in the back? Is the garden?
Yes, the garden was. I mean, it was like a swimming pool. It was right underwater. It's not looking so bad now. The water's receded, but we're going to have to, I think, do a lot of work. All the flower pots are over and that sort of thing.
You do seem fairly cheerful about it.
Yes.
Really underneath.
I think you just have to make the best of things and get on with it. It wasn't a very good Easter for us, but we're back now and we're going to clean it all up and we'll be all right, I suppose. Yes.
Well, as we heard there, Candy Borsada was insured and she'll be wanting a quick payout from her insurance company. Well, joining me on the line now from London is Suzanne Moore from the Association of British Insurers. Suzanne Moore, will the insurers be paying out quickly?
Yes, they will. I mean, it's really times like this that insurance is crucial, and I think companies are doing all they can to deal with claims as quickly as possible.
Is there a danger, though, that you're going to be swamped with claims and this will slow things down?
Certainly there are thousands and thousands of claims coming through, and there have been since the weekend, but insurance companies have disaster plans really for times like this, and they draft in extra staff and put on extra phone lines, so I hope if there are any delays that they will be very, very slight.
Do you think there's a danger, though, that home policies will have to go up because of the big payouts that are going to have to be made by people in your industry?
Well, it's really too early to say at the moment. Certainly there is a danger of that because we're guesstimating at the moment that the total cost of the damage could be something like 500 million. So there is a possibility that premiums could go up, but nobody knows for sure at the moment.
Suzanne Moore, thank you very much indeed. There is just one crumb of comfort for people who may not have been insured. Apparently there is a possibility of some local funds being set up to help them. But for now, back to Lawrence in the studio.
We'll finish tonight as the clearing up continues in flooded Warwickshire. And over to Jane there. Good night.
Yes, thank you, Lawrence. The floodwaters may have receded, but the mess and the misery certainly have not. The Midlands has had a dreadful Easter and millions of pounds worth of property has been damaged. And it's still raining. Everyone's hoping that the experts are right and that the sort of floods we've seen in Leamington and all around the Midlands do only happen once every 150 years. From a rather cold and wet Leamington Spa in Warwickshire, from me, good night, and from the rest of the Midlands Today team, keep warm and dry. Good night.